I think as well, if you actually look at Lando's weekend wasn't perfect until the race
Mhm.
weekend, until the race. Um, but I think what was great for them was that, yeah, when the opportunity presented itself, they were able to capitalize. And it was actually a great kind of team performance because you had the upgrade. Lando's performance was great. And they kind of just trusted their instincts on, Lando said, let's go long. And they said, yeah, okay, like we'll listen to you. Like, let's do that. So I think they did exactly what they needed to do. And actually, what was really impressive about McLaren in Miami was the fact that Piastri looked pretty competitive,
Mhm.
on the car that wasn't fully updated, upgraded as well. So, yeah, I would say positive all around there. And it would kind of be fascinating to know what would have happened if both those cars had that on, in Miami, just given the fact that there was, potentially a 1-2 on the table. Who knows? But yeah, I'd say pretty impressive, and probably I mean, it is the best case scenario. You introduce an upgrade like that, and you win your first race for a year and a half. It's pretty spectacular.
So would you assume that McLaren's going to be in an even better spot in Imola because they've had some time to work with their upgrades and obviously found success in Miami? Obviously, Oscar, as we mentioned, is going to get a little bit more. Or is Imola's track and circuit so totally different than Miami that it might not lend itself to what they've done?
It is very different. The temperature is very different as well. And also, we've got to remember that while Lando did a fantastic job, he did gain the lead under a safety car, and actually over a single lap in qualifying when it mattered, he was struggling still to put it together a little bit. But that's all stuff that they potentially can work out. We know that from what we saw in Miami that the car has definitely improved and improved by a step probably bigger than your average upgrade brings. But it's accessing that performance in all corner types, in all temperatures, and also there was a big question over what exactly happened to Max Verstappen's Red Bull during that race. Did it get damaged when he took out that bollard? And if so, by how much? And how much performance did he lose? And was that just a kind of bit of a bogey track for Red Bull anyway? Because it seemed like he struggled a little bit for performance and the balance of the car throughout the weekend. And if that's the case, that's slightly concerning for the rest of the field because he still qualified on pole. And had there not been a safety car, I think we would have seen Lando progress through the field and potentially take the fight to Max. It's one of those great what ifs. I mean, I've talked to some journalists who are convinced he would have won anyway, having crunched some numbers. I'm not so sure. I think it would have been an interesting one to play out, but I think Max probably would have had something in reserve. So, so it's not guaranteed that they're going to be up there every weekend, but if they can start to figure out how to get the most out of the car of a single lap as well, that unlocks a little bit more performance. And forward they go. So it's a step. But the other thing, Andrea Stella, the team principal, who's a very well qualified engineer, he's spent most of his career up to team principal level, either being a race engineer or senior engineer within various teams. He said, really, for them to challenge Red Bull, he thinks they need another upgrade of the same level. So, at some point further down the year, you need another one of these Miami style steps. In order to catch up with Red Bull. I think the positive there is that clearly whatever they're doing back at Woking in that factory, whatever vein of kind of development they are mining, there's clearly a lot in there because they continue to bring performance to the car. So I think there's huge positives from it, but I'd be a little bit cautious about getting carried away and certainly see how the next couple of races play out. Monaco is very different, very unique. Montreal again after that is a very unusual circuit, and then we go to Spain, which is probably a circuit that's going to suit it better. So if McLaren have a little slump in form through Monaco and Montreal, because we know the car's never that great on straights and in slow speed corners, both those circuits have a lot of slow speed corners, they may then bump right back up there in Spain.
So are you telling fans that they should enjoy the bliss of Lando's win because when we get to Imola, because Red Bull is bringing their own upgrades, that we're going to be back to the dominance that we've grown so accustomed to?
I think live in the moment, enjoy any driver winning their first race because that only happens once, right? So I think when any driver does that, and especially if you're a fan, it's worth kind of celebrating that. But it's my slightly skeptical point of view, but anyone who's been watching Formula One for the last 2.5, 3 years, I think will know just how good Red Bull is and how much they bounce back. You remember Singapore last year, they were absolutely nowhere on one circuit type. And then in Suzuka, Max went and won by very nearly 20 seconds. So yeah, don't expect too much. Set your expectations relatively low for competitiveness, and then if it's better, you can only be happy with that.
Yeah, you've got to remember that the two ways Max has lost a race this year has been his brakes caught fire, and there was a safety car mid-race. I agree with Lawrence. I'm not convinced he would have been caught. I know a lot of journalists were getting excited about it, but it was quite difficult for cars to overtake at Miami as well. I think they need to look at the DRS. So not convinced. Lando could have, had a second or third without that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, we go through these kind of cycles where someone wins and suddenly everyone's like, oh, maybe Red Bull can be caught. And, they're not a stationary target. I think I was there when Stella said that about the next upgrade. And my first thought was, yeah, but for that to be the case, you also kind of need Red Bull to just be a stationary target, which
Sure.
they won't be either. We know how good that team is. And, forget all the stuff, Adrian Newey leaving. That's not got any impact on the here and now. And the team that works below Adrian is so good anyway. There's no reason to believe they're going to make some sudden disastrous upgrade that, where they lose ground, in my opinion. Hate to say that, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm probably less optimistic than Laz about it. I'd love to see it, but I just think we need to be careful, because if Max wins by, and he didn't just take pole, Lawrence was right to say he took pole, he took sprint pole, sprint race victory, and Grand Prix pole in Miami. And then he was second, and he said at the end he wasn't really pushing at the end because he Lando he didn't get past Lando. So I think there was a lot of mitigating circumstances.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.